So as I'm twisting, I really have to dynamically use the abs and the legs, right? I just want to quickly go over what we want to have on hand for equipment, just in case you need to run and grab something. So first off, make sure you've got a sturdy chair, something that doesn't have any wheels, isn't going to go anywhere on you, can support some of your body weight, because we are going to use that as a help here for some of our workout. And then if you have dumbbells, you can use something between 3 and 8 pounds would be fine for today's demonstration. We'll talk about how much weight you actually want to use on a regular basis, but that will work just fine, whatever you have. And if you don't have dumbbells, feel free to grab a couple cans. My canned dumbbells will be played by a couple cans of beans today. And then make sure that you have something just to pad your knees and joints as we get down to the floor. So either a mat, if you've got an exercise mat, or a large towel works just fine, especially if you've got a hard floor. And then you might also want something for a little bit of an assist with some of the stretches we're going to do. So I'm going to suggest either using a cylinder roller or using a throw pillow or something bigger than that. And then optionally, I'm going to show you a couple progressions of exercises that use looped resistance bands. So if that is something you have, definitely run and get those now. And if not, no problem. Body weight will be just fine today, and you can decide if that's something you want to invest in longer term. Also, make sure you have some water. And I'll try to remember to cue you to take little sips as we go along. And then as far as space, just generally enough space to make a snow angel, make a standing jumping jack in a couple different directions. And then if you also have that space available to you on the floor, that would be great too. So welcome back if you've worked out with me before. And welcome for the first time for those of you that have not. I'm Nancy Nash. I'm a personal trainer and group fitness instructor. I've done both of those things for about 7 years now. I would say my personal wellness journey began maybe about 14 years ago when I found myself over 350 pounds. In addition to being overweight, I had a lot of complications that came alongside that. I had high blood pressure. I had trouble breathing when I was doing cardiovascular activities and playing with kids. I had a lot of knee pain, lower back pain. So it was definitely my personal journey that kind of led me to discover a love of helping other people approach exercise. But it was not a quick one. I definitely did over time form a lot of healthy habits before I formally became educated. And so now I'm an American Council on Exercise certified personal trainer, group fitness instructor, behavior change specialist, and sports nutrition specialist. And I'm continuing to pursue my education and always trying to get better. So I will really appreciate your feedback in the survey after this class so that I can continue to do just that. You know, even though I kind of advertise this as a strength training workout that you can do if you're, an avid runner, hiker, walker, or cyclist, and that's definitely true. The foundation of this is really functional movement. And functional movement has really helped me live, move, do everything better, and really helped me with injury prevention. I won't go into a long list of my past injury history, but if you've been injured and never had to work back from an injury, that is really where my my skill set lies, and that's where my journey into functional fitness began. So we're going to go with injury prevention, progressing you towards your goals. So functional movement essentially means mimicking the movements that we make in everyday life. So when we're talking about walking, running, hiking, improving your stride, we're talking about using opposites together quite a bit, even in cycling. We're going to take it beyond that and add some resistance to those movement patterns so that you can really feel in your body the way that we were anatomically meant to feel. Sometimes we wind up with muscular imbalances because we just don't use muscles as frequently as the human body was meant to. So, for example, if you have tight hip flexors and you're not sure if you're training your hamstrings correctly, you are in the right place. You are not alone. That is really common in a society where we often sit for a long portion of the day to work. So I want to give you just a little bit of food for thought. We start with a genetic potential. It's probably not that hard to imagine that each person in this group is their own special, unique genetic snowflake. But did you know that even someone the same height as you, even someone that has the same leg length of you, could have a very different stride than you do for a number of different reasons? So when we're looking at something like flexibility, and we're going to be talking about flexibility and strength in tandem, when we're looking at flexibility, we're going to look at the space between the joints, and we're going to look at the length of the ligaments that connect them. So that can be very different individual to individual, and someone that has more space and more length in those ligaments is genetically going to be a bit more flexible. Now we're oversimplifying here, but I just kind of want you to start to think through, what your personal areas of imbalance that you notice in today's workout are and how you can better approach those. So also understanding that, not just my bone length ratio, like if I'm looking at my shin bone, the tibia, to my femur, the thigh bone, that ratio could be different than someone else's. Even if it's the same, I might have a different tendon to muscle length ratio, which is also going to affect how I move, how my muscles develop, and how I power them. So great looking bodybuilders tend to have really short muscles, really long tendons, because that muscle belly really bulks up. So some of that is genetic, and that's also going to affect how I generate power and my muscular endurance. So we could go, into that all day. But instead, I just kind of want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we're going through this. And paired with that, length and strength together can be thought of as one term called tensegrity, which is kind of fun to say. So like the Golden Gate Bridge, it's got all kinds of forces on it, right? It's got wind. I don't know if you know this, but the waters underneath it are some of the craziest in the world. So it needs to be not just strong, but very flexible. So if you're not familiar with it, definitely look up the construction behind it. That's one of the reasons it's famous. That term, tensegrity, applies to bridges, but it also really applies to the human body, because I need to not only be strong, but I need to be flexible in the areas that I'm meant to be. All right, so that was a lot of talking. So let's get into it. So the format of our workout today, we're going to do a dynamic warm-up. We're going to move through some stretches. We're going to do a 3-circuit workout with a level of progression, and then we're going to do a static stretching cool down. So starting with our dynamic warm-up, I'm going to have you stand up if you're seated. And you want to make sure you've got room on both sides of you. And that's going to be true throughout this workout. I'm alternatively crossing the arms. I'm not trying to force my hands back, just wherever things feel like they naturally glide right now. So just kind of noticing the difference in your left and right shoulder, in your left and right arm. If you can feel this in the fingers, just noticing those differences. So we're going to go through these warm-up movements probably 16 to 20 times, depending on the warm-up movement. And I'm just kind of saying that so you can have a number in the back of your head if I stop moving. All right, so letting that go in the shoulders, maybe giving yourself a couple rear shoulder rolls here just to kind of let go of some of that tension. Now we're going to march in place. So when I'm marching in place, I'm going to put just a little bit of thought into it. I want to make sure that the feet are pretty straight. So some of us are going to tend to turn out to the side. So if there's a lot of resistance to straightening your feet, don't worry about that too much, but just starting to think about that. And then approximately I want to line up my hip sockets, knee sockets, and ankles. And that's going to be true throughout this entire workout. So giving yourself a couple more, just trying to pump the arm with the opposite leg. And then coming back to standing, I'm going to go back into the arm crosses. So we're just going to go through our warm-up moves twice today. Hopefully in the second round, you can notice just a little more flexibility. I'm going to slightly pull the shoulder blades apart in the back. A little bit more here. And then let myself bring the hands back just a little bit further so I can feel a little bit more of that dynamic stretch across the chest, which for a lot of us that do sit is going to get really tight. And then coming back into that march in place. This time I'm going to think about bringing up the knee just a little bit more. So just knowing that in human anatomy, I should be able to lift the knee above the hip with ease. That doesn't always feel easy, does it? So you can make this a little bit exaggerated for yourself, because just remembering this is about dynamic stretching. So it's not necessarily mimicking my my best hiking form here. I mean, much more like one of those really avid power walkers from the 80s, swinging the dumbbells. All right, go ahead and let go. Give yourself a couple shoulder rolls again. All right, and then for the next two warm-up moves, we're actually going to make use of our chair here. So I'm just going to move my pillow. We'll use that towards the end. So I'm going to hold on to the back of the chair. I'm going to face both of my feet in the same direction, and I'm going to pick up one leg and just have a slight bend in the standing leg. So I'm going to swing the free leg back and forth. I want to make sure that I'm freely rotating in the hips and that I'm freely rotating in the ankle. So if you start to feel any tension in the knee and the sides, make sure that that knee has a little bend in it. And if you really feel a lot of pull side to side, I'm going to have you make this a much smaller swing. So what that's telling me, if you feel a lot of pull on the knee, is that something is a little tighter than we want it to be. Oftentimes that's going to be in the calf or in the ankle. And I'm just kind of guesstimating because I don't know your specific body right now. But I'm just kind of noticing if you feel like you really can freely turn in the hips and you do feel that turn back and forth in the ankle. So now switching sides, I'm just going to turn to the side just so it's a little easier for you to see. I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure I've got that little bend in the knee. So I'm not putting too much force on the knee's really not meant to do much rotation at all. So thinking, if I feel that force pulling on the knee, what's the ankle doing? Is it actually twisting back and forth? Is the hip twisting back and forth? So usually there's resistance in one of those areas. And this is really important when we're doing all of these sports that we're talking about too. This is actually something I do pretty frequently before I go for a run. And for me, it has a lot to do with the ankles. I've had a lot of ankle injuries. So in addition to strengthening my ankles, it's really important that they properly rotate, because I'm not going to just move in a straight line, right? We're going to have those little variations side to side. All right, so letting go of that, we're going to use the chair in a different sense. This time I'm going to place my hands on the chair. I want to step back just a little ways. I'll show you what we're going to do first. So I'm going to do a modified down dog stretch here to a plank stretch. So when I do my modified down dog, I'm going to bend the knees. I'm going to push the hips back so that I'm getting a good stretch in the shoulders and in the back. I'm still keeping the back pretty flat. And then as I shift forward, I'm going to make sure that my shoulders line up approximately over the wrists. I slightly bend the elbows and I pull the shoulders down, right? So I don't wind up with my shoulders up to my ears. So then I'm going to try to drive the heels down. So I should get a really good stretch in the back of the legs. And then I should also kind of feel that area right below the shoulders light up because I'm pulling the shoulders down. So let's try that again. When I push back here, I'm going to bend the knees. And then as I shift forward, I'm going to pull the shoulders down and push the heels down. So this is actually quite a bit of work, even though I'm calling this a warm-up. You're really going to notice left to right where things are a little bit different. Sometimes you can notice some tightness in one hip, in one of your ankles or shoulders. And then hopefully, as you kind of shift your hips into plank, you can feel a little engagement in the abs. So going back and forth a couple more times here. And then go ahead and let yourself walk back up. And we're going to do that leg swing across again. So going back into our leg swing across, we may have eased up whatever tightness was keeping you from turning freely. Not necessarily, but just kind of noticing, if that tension in the knee's gone. Does it feel like you can stretch your calf a little bit more as you turn side to side? That's great. Maybe you feel the stretch in the foot itself, or maybe you just feel it in the hips. Again, everybody's a little different. Be our own special snowflakes today. And then go ahead and switch sides. So for me, the right side is like almost always there's something just a little bit tighter. I definitely still, because of all my left-sided injuries, I think, still tend to put, at least during some portion of the day, a little more weight into my right side. So it feels pretty good to me today, but I can feel that the right ankle is just a little bit tighter there. So just letting yourself notice that. All right, and then coming out of that, so we did the shoulder shrug. That's a really good way to tell the body to just kind of relax the shoulders. There's actually like an effect that happens in the nervous system. I don't have a perfect solution for that in the hips, but I will say, as silly as it sounds, doing a couple hip circles can help you let go of some of that tightness and tension in the hips. All right. So now we're going to do that plank to down dog stretch one more time here. So you can step your feet a little closer if it felt like this was a really big ask, a really big reach for you. Or you could step your feet a little further back this time if you felt like you really weren't able to feel that stretch in the calves. So again, there's not exactly a right or wrong here. Think of it as more like good, better, best for your body. So wherever this feels most helpful. So I'm going to bend the knees, really push the hips back as evenly as I can. And then driving both heels down as I shift the body forward, pulling the shoulders down. Just keeping that slight bend in the elbows. And then on that last push back, go ahead and let yourself shift the hips to one side and hold for a moment, which is going to in turn stretch the opposite side. And then shift your hips in the other direction, stretching the other side. All right, so go ahead and walk up. Feel free to grab some water. So we're going to want just one of your dumbbells or cans to start with. So I'm going to play along with the can crowd for this one. So I do want to make sure I've got enough room here. I probably won't need the chair. I can still kind of use it as a handrail if I need to. But we're actually going to start with a forward lunge. So I'm going to hold the can at center, right at my chest, and kind of think about squeezing it together. So we talked about everything is going to kind of start from that core stability. So in order to get that, I'm going to, what I say is suck and tuck. I'm going to pull the belly button in, really thinking about pulling it towards my spine, and I'm going to tuck my pelvis. So if you think about it, some of us are kind of stuck in this posture. This is my abs being too long, my belly hanging out. So I want to do the opposite of that. I want to try to create length here and shorten these muscles and really pull them in. So suck and tuck, hold this at center, and then I'm going to take alternate steps forward. And I say steps forward because people have a lot of different ideas about lunging. I'm going to describe that I think about the feet being on train tracks. I think that's the best analogy. If you've got boards in your floor and you can really line up for yourself with them, that's excellent. You could also think about stepping in the other direction and stepping to the same line so that I'm asking the same of the left and right side. With a forward lunge, I should also be shifting most of my weight forward. And as I push back, I want to do most of that push back using the ball of the foot. So as much as I can, I'm going to land on the ball of the foot, push off the ball of the foot. So let yourself try a couple more like that. Thinking about your landing, thinking about that push off, letting that back heel come up a little bit. And so rather than, just stepping incredibly long here, I'm going to start thinking about going a little bit deeper. So I decide how long I'm going to step by where my knee goes. So you may have heard that term, don't let the knee pass the toe. For most people, that's a good line of consideration, because as soon as my knee goes past the toe, the force on the knee starts to really increase. So even though in running, technically that is going to happen, when we're lunging and introducing resistance, I'm going to recommend that's where you stop. You put the brakes on in your quads and push back. All right, so go ahead and relax the legs for just a moment. For our second exercise in this circuit, I'm going to use the one can or dumbbell again, but I'm going to use my chair. So I want to line up in an all fours kind of tabletop position with the wrists underneath the shoulders and the ankles right underneath the hips. So I'm going to draw the belly button in, suck and tuck. If I'm having trouble keeping the lower back flat and it's kind of dipping like that, make sure you bend the knees to help you. All right. So if you've got really long legs like I do, you're probably going to have to push your butt back. You might need to bend the knees a little bit if the legs are a little tight. And then we're going to do a single arm row. So when I'm pulling, I'm trying to use my abs. I'm actually going to use my legs. I'm going to push into the feet a little bit as I pull. And then I really want to start using that area underneath the shoulder blades and in the back. So if I pull and I raise the shoulder up like this, then I'm really just using the upper traps. And this is adding to tightness up here and in my neck. And that's not going to feel fabulous as this weight increases. So as much as I can, I'm going to draw the shoulder down my back, draw the elbow towards the waistline, still leaving a little space here. All right. And if you didn't master that on the first side, that's okay. We're going to switch and do the other side. So try as much as you can to count on your own. I know we're not going to do perfect sets today. So I would go for 8 to 10 reps. And then judging how heavy of a weight you want, you really want the last couple reps in that set to feel kind of heavy, like you would like to put it down. And that's kind of your sweet spot for working to progression. You should feel like you've got, just a couple more reps maybe you could push out. And that's an okay place to stop. All right. So once you've got your 8 to 12 reps there, you focus on that movement pattern, really pulling the shoulder down, pulling the elbow down towards your waist. We're going to go back into our forward lunges, but we are going to introduce a progression. So this time, I'm going to lunge forward. I'm going to twist towards that leg, twist back, and then push back. So go ahead and switch sides, twist, turn, and push back. So lunging forward again, I'm going to twist, turn, and push back. So if you're feeling pretty comfortable lunging and you want to get a little bit deeper with this, that's another way to make it difficult. So as I'm twisting, I really have to dynamically use the abs and the legs, right? You can feel that shake in the leg muscles. You can feel that work in the obliques. So suck and tuck, land, twist, push back. Try one more on the other leg. And for this one, just make sure you're being even left to right. Don't be mean to just one side. All right. So hopefully that stepped it up just a little bit for you. And then for our progression on our second exercise, we're going to do a little bit of a leg balance here. So I'm going to again come into my all fours position, pulling the belly in. And now I'm going to lift the opposite leg of the arm that's hanging freely here. So I'm going to hold that leg up, pressing the heel like I'm pressing to the wall behind me. Let me just turn so you can see. So I'm going to press that leg out straight, like I'm pressing the heel to the wall behind me as I pull. So as much as I can, I want to make sure that I keep those hips level. Trying to hold myself accountable here to you. Really drawing the belly button in as I pull the shoulder blade down. And so hopefully you could feel the increase in that challenge in the abs and in the legs. Should get a little booty burn with that one. So we're going to switch to the other side. All right, so coming into that all fours position, make sure you've got the belly pulled in first. That's going to make it a lot easier when you lift that leg, straightening it, pressing it to the wall behind you. So I shouldn't find that my heel is coming above my hip, because that's really going to throw off my ability to use the abs. And then really drawing that shoulder blade down as I pull that can back. All right. Nice job. So go ahead and grab some water. So for our next set of exercises, we're going to use both of the cans. And then if you do have the looped bands, we'll wind up using the medium one for the second set there. So picking up both of your cans or dumbbells, I'm going to have you focus on just standing. So you've got the ankles, knees, and hips stacked. So approximately the feet are straight. I've got just a slight bend in the knees. And I'm going to do that suck and tuck with the abs as I curl up and control on the way back down. So the other thing I want to focus on with the bicep curl is I want to make sure that I've got the elbows forward of the rib cage. So I want to make sure I'm not crunching the shoulders in together. I've got these nice and straight. So thinking of like lifting and serving a tray to the front and then controlling on the way back down. So that control on the way back down, that eccentric motion, that actually is a really powerful part of this in building strength. And as this gets heavier, I really want to learn what it is to use the muscles in my core, my abs and my back to do that lift and do that lower. So I definitely don't want to be swinging these. That's very, very different, right? Cardiovascular motion for sure, but that's not specific strength building, pushing against gravity. So go ahead and give yourself a couple more, just practicing that. And it is possible that you don't have something heavy enough right now to practice this sufficiently for yourself, but keep these principles in mind later when you come back to whatever it is you lift in your day-to-day life. So I'm going to go back down to one can, and then I want to make sure I've got enough room here to step side to side. So depending on how long your legs are, that might be more room than someone else. So I'm going to hold the can at center. Again, this is just to help me keep my torso upright, help me access those core muscles. I'm going to do that suck and tuck, and I'm going to lunge to the side, come back to center, and lunge to the other side and come back to center. So a side lunge is really going to test me differently than a forward lunge. So now I'm really going to focus on lining the joints up before I push back. So I want to step to the side, shift the hip to the side, and then push the hip back and really drive off that foot. I still want to try to land with the ball of the foot if I can. It feels a little bit different here. But you can notice if you slap your heel down how different that feels. Kind of that ripple that goes right up through your joints. So I still want to try to nimbly land with the middle to ball of the foot and push off that area of the foot, generating power right back to that center standing position. So give yourself a couple more just to feel that. I should feel this a lot in the thighs. I should feel it in the glutes. I should feel it in the abs. Definitely going to feel that stretch on the inner thighs. All right, just making sure that you get an even number side to side there. Now we're going to go through both exercises again with a progression. So with my bicep curl, I'm going to add an overhead press to that. I'm also going to add a turn. So now we're going to work the shoulders from multiple angles. So I'm going to curl up, turn so the palms are forward, press overhead, and then control that on the way back down. So now I'm really working on those muscles with my posture. So I'm going to pull the belly in, curl up, turn the palms forward, and then keeping the weights or dumbbells right in front of the face, kind of in line with the nose. Press them both overhead, and then come back down towards the ears where I still have some tension. Turn the wrists back around and lower back down. So you can see it takes a little bit more thinking to do it this way, doesn't it? So the nice thing, about having two dumbbells or cans instead of a bar, in addition to the fact that I can work the shoulders more dynamically and I can turn the hands to do that, I'm also going to be able to compensate better if I've had an injury on one side or I just have a shoulder that's a lot tighter. I'm going to be able to notice where that is. So just really working within your own body, kind of noticing those imbalances. And if it doesn't feel good, you don't have to push completely overhead. So give yourself permission to do what you need to do, and don't increase the weight on this until it feels good on both sides. All right, so going back to just one can here. Now I'm going to use that yellow, well, for me it's yellow, the medium resistance band, and I'm going to place it right above the knees. So even though I can be an example and show you how to put this on without a chair, I would say put it on with a chair if you've got one. All right, so putting it right above the knees here. I'm again going to step side to side, but what I'm really going to notice is that the band's pulling the knees in. So just me resisting that as I do that suck and tuck is going to work the glutes. It's going to work my hips a lot more. So now I really have to work to get that ankle, knee, and hip to line up. All right. But make sure that you really work to shift that hip over the ankle, push that knee out. And by out, I just mean in line with the ankle before you push back. So you should have no knee pain with this. If you do, analyze a couple of things. So number one, are my feet nice and straight? Number two, is that knee coming in? And number three, am I really stepping at a length where I can shift that hip in line with the ankle? So if I kind of step so wide that I can't shift the hip over, now when I go back, I'm putting a lot more stress on the outside of that knee. So just thinking about that, if my inner thighs are tight, if my glutes aren't that strong, this exercise might look more like this. That's okay. So give yourself that starting point. All right. If I do have something like a foam roller, I could always use this to help myself side to side. So just giving yourself whatever space you need to make the modifications you need. All right. If you had time for a couple more lunges while I was fixing this, fantastic. Wherever you're at, go ahead and finish your last one. And then we're actually going to come down to the floor. We are going to bring the medium resistance band, and we also want to bring the light resistance band and either your foam roller or your pillow. So we don't need the dumbbells down there, but we do need bands, pillow, or foam roller, and your mat and your water. So hopefully you're feeling some new things in your body. If you're really excited about that, please feel free to share something in the chat and we'll take a look at that afterwards. All right, so coming down to the floor, I'm going to start on your side. Okay, so I'm going to lay on one side and I'm either going to, take my hand and put it behind the head. I could always use the pillow. I could use the foam roller, whatever you need to make sure your shoulder's in a neutral position. I'm going to bend the knees to about 90 degrees. And then I'm going to bring the heels so that they're pretty much level with my back and turn that top hip forward. So this is probably the most important part. We're going to do a clamshell exercise. So I want you to think about the clam having an overbite because that hip has to stay forward so that gravity can put force down on the outside of the hip on the glute muscles and make it difficult for me to lift this knee. So I'm going to keep the feet together, lift the knee to the extent that I can without rolling back, and then lower it back down. This is kind of a weird little game because you realize as soon as you roll back, you can really lift your knee, right? But then I'm using different muscle groups. I'm starting to use the quads. I'm going to use the TFL a lot more, which is that area right here that's covered by a pocket. What I really want to do is pull the belly button in, squeeze the butt muscles, and use the glutes and the muscles that assist the glutes. So lifting, holding for a moment, and lowering back down. We're going to shoot for about 10 of these. And then we're going to turn over and do this on the other side. So feel free to finish your 10 if you want to, if you still need to. And then go ahead and join us on the other side. So coming to the other side, again, making sure the head's comfortable. Again, bending the knees to 90 degrees. I'm going to line up the feet with the back, just approximately, and then roll that hip forward until I can see that there's, at least an inch, maybe 2 inches of an overbite, and then lift and lower. So this might feel radically different from the other side, or, maybe both sides feel the same. But in a culture where we do sit for work a lot, usually these muscles are kind of dormant. Usually they're undertrained, which is why we're picking on them. Sorry, glutes. But the truth is that you're going to feel a lot more capacitated to get power in your stride when you have glute muscles that are assisting your quads. You're going to feel them a lot more in the lunges that we just did. You're going to feel them a lot more even in your walking, which might sound really foreign, but it's a pretty cool thing when you start feeling like everything's working together, puts a lot less strain on the knees. All right, I digress, but I'm sure you've done about 10. Now we are going to turn onto your back. All right, so our second exercise here is a dead bug. So for the dead bug, I'm going to lift the knee right above the hip. I'm going to lift the wrists right above the shoulders on both sides. So I want to do that suck and tuck, pull the belly in, press the back to the floor, and then I'm going to bring the knee as close as I can to right over the hip. This should immediately create a lot of tension in the lower abs and the hip. And if you cannot keep the back on the floor, you can pull the knees back here. All right, so as much as I can, this is going to be my dead bug start position. Pulling the belly in, I'm going to press one heel, reach the opposite hand, come back to center, and switch sides. So I'm going to do my best to reset in the middle here. When I pull back up, I'm only going to lower the legs so far as I can keep those lower abs pulling in, keep that lower back pressed into the ground. And same thing with the shoulders and the upper abs. So really pulling in and pressing, and then coming back to center. So you can hear my breathing. This is a difficult exercise when you do it correctly. So I would give yourself about 10 reps, or, just take it in a set of 1 on each side, rest, and then start adding them in bilaterally, just so you get a feel for what the real tension is supposed to feel like, not just bicycling as fast as you possibly can. Remember that this is a strength workout, and you're going to get plenty of that cardiovascular exercise in in your other routines. All right, so now we're going to go through the progression of both of these exercises. So I'm going to have you take your band. I'm going to use the medium band. You could use the light one. You could use the hard one here, but I think this is going to give you enough resistance that you'll notice it. I'm going to place it right above the knee. And then I'm going to turn back onto my side and do the clamshells again. All right. So 90-degree bend in the knee, lining up the heels with the back, and then turning that top hip forward till I've got a 1 to 2 inch overbite, making sure that I do that suck and tuck with the abs. And I'm going to, if I can feel it, tighten the glute muscles before I even get that lift. So rather than just expecting them to kick in this time, I'm going to talk to them and tell them to kick in and then try to use them to do this lateral motion. Now, if you've ever done a trail run or a hike where you've had some sort of lateral twist or sprain, strengthening the muscles that help us with lateral motion is really, really good for avoiding those injuries. Even if you are a runner and you just move straight as much as you possibly can, training these muscles really helps you have that stability, when the body does get tired and when you do need to move side to side. So go ahead and give yourself about 10 of those. And then we're going to turn and do that on the other side again. You don't have to spin around like that. I just think it's kind of fun on this floor. Okay. So pulling the belly button in, bending the knees, checking out that heel position, positioning my knees so I've got that overbite, pulling the belly in, squeezing the glutes. So you can lift and hold here and then lower down. If you do that, I would just do it really briefly, maybe for a second or so. We're not doing a lot of isometrics in this workout because we really want this to translate into motion for you. So just kind of feel how it's different left to right. Let yourself try a couple more until you reach approximately the same number as the other side. Sometimes one side is really stubborn about kicking in, so make sure you've got that hip shifted forward. All right, and then we're going to pop this band off. I'm going to switch over to the light band to do the progression of dead bug. Okay. All right, so I've got the band right about the, around the arches of the feet, towards the balls of the feet. I'm going to lay myself all the way down here again, and then I'm going to try to come back into that start position we had before. So with the knees right over the hips, pulling the belly button in, positioning the hands right over the shoulders. I'm going to draw the belly button in, press with the heel and the opposite hand, pull back to center and switch sides. So now I'm going to have some force pulling my feet together. So I'm really going to have to control that. Thinking about keeping that alignment with the ankle, the knee, and the hip. I'm going to pull the belly button in and press, come back to center, and switch sides. So we've created a lot more resistance on the front of the thighs and the front of the hips. So doing the best you can with this. Again, you can always take a couple reps, come back in, let yourself reset, and then come back into it, right? 4 reps plus 4 reps plus 2 reps is still 10 reps, okay? And this endurance will build, and you really will notice that it's so much easier for you to really climb hills. It's so much easier for you to control everything as your core muscles build. All right, so we're going to go through a couple stretches some good ways to cool down the body. So you can set the bands to the side. Feel free to grab some water if you need to. So I'm going to have you come back onto your back for just a moment. Place one foot on the floor, and then I'm going to cross the opposite ankle right in front of that knee. So I'm going to try to slow down my breathing a little bit. If I need more out of this stretch, I could step the heel a little closer to the glutes. I could press on the inner thigh a little bit. So take whatever you need out of this stretch. There's not a right or a wrong. It should feel like a stretch, like maybe a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Not a strain, not like it's pulling you anywhere near beyond your limit. So holding for maybe 10 to 20 seconds and then letting yourself switch sides. So you might notice that one hip feels a lot freer than the other one. Everybody's a little different. If your hips are still feeling a little tight, no worries. We're going to keep stretching them. So I'm going to straighten one leg. I'm going to bend the other knee. And I'm going to start twisting across. As I twist across, I'm going to take my arms and reach them out to opposing walls, or at least as far as I can with whatever's around me. And I'm going to try to keep my shoulders on the ground. So keeping my shoulders on the ground is going to limit my ability to twist, but it should result in me getting a good stretch throughout the chest, in the side wall, the abs, in the top hip on the outside, and you might even feel that in the lower back, which is also likely the hip flexor area. And then go ahead and let yourself come back to center and slowly switch sides. So I'm going to straighten the opposite leg. I'm going to keep the hands on the floor, keep the shoulders on the floor, and twist in the opposite direction. So if it feels okay, I could always drop the foot to the other side of my leg. I could also take this pillow, and I apologize for not saying this the first time, take the pillow or the roller and place it underneath the knee to give myself a little extra support here. So if you feel any tension on the knee, it's really good to have that support. All right, and then letting yourself come back to center. Go ahead and roll to one side, come up. And I'm going to use the help of my chair for this next stretch. I might want the pillow or just my rolled up mat or towel right underneath my knee. So I'm going to have you position yourself so the knee that you're kneeling on is closer to your chair. And then we're going to place the other foot on the floor. Okay. All right, so letting yourself lunge forward just a little bit further. And then go ahead and let yourself switch sides with that. So if you don't feel much of a stretch in the front of the hip and thigh doing this, I'm going to have you just think about kind of pulling the belly button in slightly, maybe stepping that foot out a little bit further, and making sure that my head and my torso aren't leaning over. So the more I think about just kind of thrusting the hips forward together, the more I should really get a stretch in the front of the hip and the front of the thigh on the kneeling side. And then go ahead and let yourself come all the way up to standing. Still using our chair here. I'm going to step the foot forward that's closest to the chair, step the other foot back, and just bend both knees, making sure I've got a slight bend in that knee behind me. And then I'm going to reach up and over. So now I'm still, getting a stretch in the front of the hip, but now I should also feel it kind of up the side and into the back of the shoulder. And go ahead and let yourself switch and try that on the other side. You can move your body instead of moving the furniture. I just want to make sure I can stay facing you. So making sure both knees are bent. I'm going to reach up and over just wherever that feels like a good stretch. All right. And then lastly, I'm going to place the chair in front of me. I want to make sure I've got enough room to step back. I'm going to hold on to the back of it. Keep the knees a bit bent. Really push the hips back. So getting a good stretch into the back of the hips. And then I'm slowly going to start straightening the legs here. So now I'm increasing that stretch kind of up the leg, especially in the hamstrings and the back of the thighs. And now I'm going to shift some weight into the balls of the feet. If I need to, I can bend the elbows with this. And now I should feel it a bit in the calves as well. So just holding these stretches at the end of a workout is really crucial in building permanent length, permanent flexibility in the muscles. This is when they're going to be most open to it. And then go ahead and give yourself a good breath in and breath out. Congratulations. You made it. All right. Great job today. So, my recommendations for making the most out of this workout, if you're not in a regular routine with a strength training program, you could probably start doing this twice a week, making sure you've got a day of rest in between to check in with your body. You could also introduce it into a current strength routine, just switching it out for one of your strength workouts. I would make sure that you progress to doing 3 sets of the exercises, doing 8 to 12 reps of the more difficult version before you consider really increasing the weight and resistance. So if I'm doing 3 sets, I can do 12 reps, and reps 10 through 12 feel pretty challenging for me, then that's a good working threshold. And that's at the point where I might consider starting to increase the weight. If you want really specific advice on your programming, I would like to address that with you in a one-on-one session, because I'll be able to answer those questions much better, knowing a little more about what you're currently doing and what you've been through. So you can schedule a one-on-one appointment with me. Please feel free, if you do have any other thoughts, comments at all, please feel free to respond to the email I send out. And apart from that, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great evening and a great rest of your week. Take care. Individuality